Hi, and welcome to Ladies of Another View. I'm back. This is the 2022 edition, first show of the year.
Hey!
Wow.
It's
Pretty
great
exciting.
to be back.
Yeah, so I'm here with Donna and Mary and Vern Dosch. You are our first guest
Oh,
Of
for the
2022.
year.
very cool.
And
Welcome.
so let me
Thank you.
introduce you. Welcome to the show. Thank you
you.
for coming in. And Vern is the retired CEO of NISC, the National Information
Solutions
Cooperative. And why don't you tell us what that is?
Well, it's an interesting organization, kind of a stealth organization, really, in our community, in that it began over 50 years ago. And rural electrics and rural telephones around the state were getting started. They had to automate their billing and accounting and engineering, but it was really hard for these small co-ops to do that on their own. Programmers were hard to get a hold of, mainframes cost $1 million. So the concept was to form a co-op that would serve co-ops. So NISC became this co-op that developed billing software, accounting software, engineering software, and then distributed it to what originally was co-ops around the state, but today is co-ops in all 50 states.
Oh, 50, because when you wrote a book, and we're going to talk about your book on
Yes.
servant leadership wired differently, at the time it was 49 states, and I thought, well, I can't wait to find out what that one
It's
holdout
50.
is.
It was
One
New
holdout.
Jersey.
New Jersey, okay. Now, a lot of our viewers might think, wow, this sounds really boring. Why is she having him on to talk about a co-op? But to me, it's fascinating because a lot of people don't even know what co-ops are. And especially in North Dakota, a lot of the rural areas did not have electricity and telephone long after everybody else did. So can you kind of explain what is a co-op?
Yeah, so, what happened in those early days, and this would be in the 30s, 40s, 50s, there was electricity in the metro areas, there was telecommunications in the metro areas. So if you lived in Bismarck, Grand Forks, Fargo, you probably had power and telephone. But if you lived in Wing, North Dakota, or Flasher, North Dakota, not so much. There really wasn't a good business model that said it made financial sense to deliver services to these rural areas because you only had a couple of customers per mile of line. I mean, if you go to Slope County in North Dakota, there's less than one customer per mile of line. So when you think about that, stringing telephone wire or electric wire to serve these customers, it was very expensive, and it just didn't make a very good business proposition for a for-profit company. So the old saying, necessity is the mother of invention, right? It's like, okay, we don't want these rural areas to be second-class citizens. We don't want this technical divide. So I guess we're going to have to do it ourselves, right? And so you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Counties got together, rural people got together, formed these little co-ops all across North Dakota. And literally at one point, there were about 1,100 of them across the country where they served small areas, maybe 3 counties. But, they were a nonprofit. They were local people coming together to provide which was a critical resource that they probably wouldn't have gotten before. So in my mind, a lot of times cooperatives fill a particular niche. It's not that, I'm a believer in for-profit and the stock market and all that. All that is great. But sometimes in order to get something done, like serve rural America with electricity and telecommunications, you needed to do it with a co-op. It had to be a nonprofit because it just wasn't a big money-making proposition.
And if you don't live in a rural area, you might be oblivious to that, because weren't there some places in North Dakota that didn't get electricity till the 1950s?
Yes, no, that's
that
true.
seems like, how
Yeah.
could that be?
Yeah.
And-
well, my husband lived by Regan, so they didn't have electricity. They didn't have a phone, or they did. It was a party line. Remember
Yeah.
party line.
Yes.
So
I
I
it
had a
was-
party line.
Yeah.
You listen and you hear everybody in the neighborhood because it was one line serving like 5 families or something. Yeah. So that was till the 70s.
But what's so neat today is, we went from those rural areas not being served at all. When I came in the building here, there was a map of Dakota Carrier Network.
Yeah.
And North Dakota today has more fiber to the home than any other state in the nation. I mean, so these rural companies, these local grassroots people have done an amazing job of building out a network that allows a lot of these rural people, you know, farmers, ranchers, to have second jobs and to be able to do that virtually. So it's a really cool story of how cooperatives facilitated not only a quality of life, but also had a huge impact, an economic impact on the state.
And
then-
safety.
Yeah, I was going to say, so the owners of the co-ops, or the people that pay into the co-ops are the owners of the co-ops. And so they kind of share the expense, and then if there's any profit at the end, they also get a dividend.
Right. There's a small, you know, margin at the end of the year, right? You have to be financially viable, but that gets allocated back to the customers.
Right.
I mean, for NISC, as a cooperative, a technology cooperative, which sounds it's almost an oxymoron, right? Because when you think of startup technology companies, you think of, you know, Steve Jobs starting Apple in his garage and getting fabulously, you know, wealthy. I mean, Apple crossed over $3 trillion market cap.
Wow.
So that's kind of what you think about for technology organizations. And it's not unusual for a technology organization to have publicly traded company to have margins of 30, 40, 50%. With NISC, we were able to operate on a very small margin. Our margin was generally between 4 and 6%. And then whatever margin we had, we allocated that back to our members.
What's
Then it
interesting?
keeps, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Donna.
I was just thinking it keeps the cost down for your members too,
Yeah.
so that it's reasonable for them to be able to afford to have these services, the telephone, the TV, the internet, things like that.
That's so important. I mean, having the service is one thing,
Yeah.
having it be affordable is another. And again, if you look at North Dakota from an energy standpoint, we have some of the lowest cost energy in the country.
For now.
So it's pretty cool for now.
And the cooperatives have a lot to do with that. We're going to be talking about your book. We haven't gotten to it yet. Time is going by so fast. Wired Differently, where you talk about the servant leadership, and that you're focused on service and quality, you know, care and products, as opposed to just looking at the profit. And in the end, you come up with a better product. And you use the example that, for instance, some people are familiar with REI, the recreational
Yeah.
equipment. And, if you go to bigger cities, you can go to an REI store, and I love those stores. And you get the best service. You told a story in the book that you can share.
So I love REI because you talk about creating an environment for your employees where they love what they do. They're passionate about what they do. I mean, this isn't just a real retailer where you can buy hiking shoes or a kayak. These people love what they're doing. And if you're in there talking to someone about buying a kayak, like the story in the book, that person was an expert. And on the weekends, they were kayaking, you know, and the store would say, we want you to be expert on whatever you're selling. So on the weekends, you take a kayak and you go so that you can really help people. You can really serve the customer, right? And so that's, whenever I would travel, I would always look for an REI because I always felt that we could learn something about customer service from REI and about employees being passionate about serving.
Because it is a cooperative.
Yeah.
It's not just, you know, you become a member and you bought a kayak, you went home, we only have like 10 seconds. You went home, it was the wrong size. And they just sent you a new one.
Yeah, and I said to them, I bought it from the REI in Minneapolis. It's 600 miles away. I said, I'm sorry, it's my mistake. I got the wrong size. You know, I'll drop it off the next time. And they said, no, we want you to be happy. We don't want the summer to waste away. We're going to send you the right size. And whenever you get around to it, you can bring the other one back. Well, I kept them both. My wife has a kayak now, too.
Right. I mean, customer service goes a long way.
It
And in the
does.
long run, if you're not just looking at making money, but making people happy, and you will make money ultimately, but that's not what the co-op is about. You are located in Mandan, North Dakota. Here's a picture of your office. And people don't realize that North Dakota has some nationally renowned businesses, and NISC is one of them. Look at some of these fun facts about the company. You're in all 50 states, and I love this one, is that in 2021, Computer World magazine honored NISC as one of the top 100 best places to work in IT. for the 18th, and you told me it's for the 19th. You're up to the 19th year consecutive year. You create such a good atmosphere, and I think it's related to what you talked about in your book, Wired Differently, where you talk about servant leadership, and you can get it on Amazon. I don't know if you can get it anywhere else.
I tried Barnes and Noble, and they don't have it there.
They
so you
can
need to
order
talk
it.
to them.
Okay,
Yeah.
we need to.
If you go into a bookstore, you can say, hey, I want to get the book Wired Differently by Vern Dosch. Oftentimes, they'll just order it in for you. And it's how to spark better results with a cooperative business model, servant leadership, and shared values. What is servant leadership?
Well, servant leadership, let me step back and tell you why that even became a thing for NISC. And it really goes back to about 1974. I'm an undergraduate at the University of Mary. One of the required classes is servant leadership, and it was taught by Sister Thomas Welder.
The best.
Wonderful, wonderful person.
And honestly, at the time, I'm 20 years old, I didn't understand the significance that the president of the university would be teaching this class. And I'm almost embarrassed to say that I thought it was kind of lame. It's like servant leadership. Aren't leaders supposed to be charismatic and decisive and, almost dictators, right? What they say goes. And here you have this Benedictine nun talking about serving others. And so I thought, that just doesn't seem to connect with me. But there were a few seeds that were planted along the way. That certainly was the first one. I picked up a book by Robert Greenleaf, who wrote in the 80s about servant leadership. James Hunter wrote about servant leadership in the 90s. And I started reading this, and it really started making sense. And it was like, yes, we want to create a culture where the employees are honored and where we take care of them. And it's kind of like you said, Patty. What is the major objective of our organization? Is it to make money? Well, we needed to be financially viable, but the major objective was to take care of the employees so that they could take care of the customers. That really is the way we approached it. And that's really what servant leadership says, is that take care of the employees, nurture them, invest in them, and they will do amazing things for your company. And that's always a risk, because if you're investing in your employees, you're making them more marketable, and hopefully they stay, right? But they may not. But that's a chance in business that you take. So that servant leadership concept was really to differentiate NISC in the marketplace. When we were selling our product, we were competing against Oracle, Microsoft, SAP. SAP has 127,000 employees. NISC had 1,400. We knew that when we were sitting down with employees, interviewing them, they probably had another offer in their back pocket. And it probably was from Microsoft. It probably was from Apple. We were doing virtual before virtual was cool, right? Because you could as a technology company. So how do you convince them to come to work for this little software company in Mandan, North Dakota, versus saying, I work for Apple? We're not going to win that battle based on salary or benefits. Apple has $200 billion in the bank. They can buy whatever talent they want. So our philosophy was, we're going to create a culture that encourages employees to come, encourages them to stay, because that is, in this day of the Great Resignation, that is the biggest risk for any business. And certainly NISC is a technology company. Is our biggest risk. So the concept of servant leadership, I wish I could tell you it was all noble and everything, but a lot of it was just making sure that we could compete in the marketplace and that we were going to distinguish ourselves in the marketplace. And when a lot of us started working, we didn't think too much about values or culture. We thought about what's my wage and what's the signing bonus, right? Today, the young people want to work for a company that they believe in. They want to work for managers that they believe in. They want to work for not necessarily a company that says the politically correct things, but does the right thing. So for us, that concept of do the right thing always, do the right thing always when it comes to taking care of our employees, taking care of our customers, do the right thing. And the other thing is, as we built the management staff based on that servant leadership approach, our philosophy was, if service is beneath you, then leadership is beyond you. If
I love
you
that.
don't
Yeah.
It's a
have,
great saying.
if you don't have a passion to serve, you can't be a leader here. So that's really, Patty, how that got started. It was something that we felt was going to be necessary for us to successfully meet the needs of our member owners, because we needed to have the right employees to do that.
And you create some camaraderie. And I want to get to this question. I want to run out of time. So many people talk about socialism, and it's growing in popularity because a lot of young people don't really know the history. They don't understand what socialism is. And some people might think, and you brought it up in your book, that cooperatives are not socialism. Can you tell me what the difference is?
Well, it's our cooperative was served to perform a service, and that was to deliver technology to rural America. It wasn't for the founder of NISC to get very rich. It was to provide a service and then share the good fortune. So every one of our customers got a part of the profits based on the amount of business they did with us. So it's a very different concept in that the wealth isn't centralized. You realize that you're going about this to provide a critical need, and oh, by the way, the money that we're going to make is going to be shared by everybody.
So it's not capitalism, but it's not socialism either, right? I mean,
You know,
Well, it's almost like an investment. People are putting money into it, and they're working hard at it, and they're getting paid back, in a
Right.
sense, where it's not giving out to those who don't put anything into it, which is socialism. So
Yeah.
I would say
that
that's,
everybody gets no matter what, right?
yeah, it was sharing the good fortunes of the success that you were having based on the amount of business. And that's REI too. I mean, you get a dividend check at the end of the year based on the amount of business. It isn't necessarily, they don't have to worry about paying shareholders a dividend. They don't have to worry about what's our stock price today. And they don't make decisions, business decisions based on what can we do that's going to increase our stock price. No, we made decisions, long-term decisions, based on what's the best for our customers, what's the best for our employees. That's how we made the decisions. And oh, by the way, that may seem a little Pollyannish, but it provided for a great business model that today, a lot of NISC's growth comes from SAP, Oracle, Microsoft, where, again, this little software company, this little co-op software company is taking business from some of the largest software companies in the world.
Right, and we've run out of time because I wanted to get to the fact that you took over a Google product that they decided wasn't profitable enough.
Yeah.
You took it, perfected it, and now you have something they don't have. So sometimes you do get a better product because you're willing to look long term and not just look at profits, but look at service. So thanks, Vern, for coming on today. It's been a pleasure.
Oh,
and
thank you for the opportunity.
amen.
well,
Yeah.
it's
No,
re-
it was great. It was really enlightening.
very inspiring because we can all be servant leaders in whatever walk of life we're in, right?
Yeah,
So
and just one other thing on the book. From the very beginning, all the proceeds of the book go into a benevolence fund for the employees.
Oh, nice.
If an employee runs into financial hardships or a natural disaster or something,
Or medical
there's
bills.
a medical
Wow.
situation, there's a
Beautiful.
anonymous check written out of that fund that comes
Okay,
from the
everybody.
proceeds.
God bless
Wired
you.
differently. Now you have extra incentive to buy it. That's beautiful. I'm glad you added that.